למען ציון לא אחשה, ולמען ירושלים לא אשקוט.
You are listening to Hebrew Voices with Nehemia Gordon. Thank you for supporting Nehemia's Makor Hebrew Foundation. Learn more at nehemiaswall.com.
Shalom, this is Nehemia Gordon, and you are listening to the very first episode of Hebrew Voices. And I am here at the Jordan River, at the place of the Jordan River crossing, where the Israelites entered into the land. I'm here with Anthony Garcia. Say shalom, Anthony.
Shalom. Hi.
Anthony, where are you from?
Arizona right now, the United States.
You're from Arizona. You're originally from New Mexico. And I want to explain to people what this Hebrew Voices is all about. Hebrew Voices is about hearing different perspectives and different ideas from people in Israel, or people who love Israel, or who have information about Israel and the Bible and the Hebrew language. And that's really what it's about. And I'm here with Anthony, and I'm actually doing something that I originally wanted to do with my friend Keith Johnson. We were doing a series called The Prophet Pearls, and the very last episode of Prophet Pearls was talking about the prophets portion of Joshua chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. It's parallel, a continuation actually, of the Torah portion of Vizot HaBracha. That's the last of the 54 Torah portions. We also originally did a series called Torah Pearls, then Prophet Pearls. And the very last episode we were going to do together on this spot where we're sitting right now, where I'm sitting with Anthony.
It's amazing.
And we are so close to the Jordan River, I could actually stick my feet out and touch the water of the Jordan with my feet. I'm not going to, because it's actually very dirty over here, but that's something maybe we'll talk about later. But what I want to do with Anthony today is hear some of his perspectives. That's that Hebrew Voices idea, and then get into scripture and talk about Joshua 1 verses 1 to 18. And also not just that, but the other things that happen on this spot here over in at the Jordan River. You know, they actually, if you ask most people what this site is, they'll call it the site of the baptism, because according to Christian tradition, this is the place where Jesus or Yeshua was baptized by John the Baptist, and also it's by tradition the place, and also geography, where the Israelites crossed from the old land, from the plains of Moab, into the promised land, into the land of Canaan, or the land of Israel. And so this is actually the place where they became Israelites, where they, up until now, I mean, they were Israelites before, but they entered into the land, and the land of Canaan became the land of Israel when they crossed over and possessed the land. And actually, it's very interesting. There's a lot of commandments that they start off and they say, when you come into the land, and it was here on this spot about 3,400 years ago that the people crossed over into the land, and the Torah came into full effect. And they, and it's interesting, up until this point, they'd wandered in the desert for 40 years and they weren't circumcised. Because it was too, they didn't know if at any moment they would have to travel. When the tent of meeting would rise up, where the cloud would rise up and the tent of meeting would be broken and move, they would have to go. And if you were just circumcised, you could die from that. And so for 40 years, they weren't circumcised. And it wasn't until they crossed over at this point, and not far from here at a place called Gilgal, in the plains of Jericho, where they were circumcised for the first time. So really, in a sense, they became full, true Israelites when they crossed over the Jordan River here. They entered not only into the covenant of Sinai, but the covenant of Abraham at this point. And it's an amazing story. And so a lot of Christians come to this site because it is the site where, according to Christian tradition, and not just tradition, we'll talk about that. Probably, if it wasn't here, it was a mile from here, where both Yeshua was baptized and where the Israelites crossed the Jordan, and a few other things happened too. So, but before I get to that, Anthony, I want you to explain to people, a lot of my listeners, they, here in Nehemia is with somebody named Anthony Garcia, who is from New Mexico, and they say, who is this guy? Is he Jewish? Is he a Christian? What is he? They want to put you in a box. So what box can we put you in, Anthony?
Well, I don't think I fit in a religious box.
So we got to have a box for you.
Yeah, I'm not a Christian. I don't follow any doctrines of that sort. But I do believe that the man they called Jesus Christ, the Yeshua, the Anointed One, is the Messiah that came over here during.
And just to be clear for the listeners, I'm not Christian. I'm not Messianic. I'm waiting for the Messiah to come. And I believe, Anthony, you'd say you're waiting for him to come back, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is the idea of Hebrew Voices. I'm not intimidated by what Anthony believes, and I want to be able to meet him on common ground. The way I met Keith Johnson and other people, meet new people on common ground. There are going to be episodes in this series where I speak to Orthodox Jews, where I speak to all kinds of interesting people, because I think there's so many voices out there, Hebrew voices, that I want people to hear. That's what this is about. And today we're going to talk about Scripture. I'm so excited. So, Anthony, so you look, I'll be honest with you. If you told my mother just now what you believe and you said those exact words, she'd say, Anthony is a Christian. There's no difference between him and the Pope. And she wouldn't be saying that to insult you. From her perspective, she's a simple Orthodox Jewish woman. From her perspective, like, if you believe in Jesus and you call him Yeshua, even if you say, I don't believe in Jesus, but I do believe in Yeshua, I've heard people say that.
And I've heard that before.
You know, to her, it's all the same thing. So for those who don't know, and they don't know you, for those who don't know, what distinguishes Anthony Garcia from Pope Francis, besides the big funny hat?
Well, a lot of
he is wearing a big funny hat, by the way. It just says Jehovah on it.
Exactly. A lot of the practices that the religions practice, I've distanced myself from. So I was raised Catholic, and I've been into a lot of the other Christian churches, non-denominations or Pentecostal or whatever. And so what I found is that there's a lot of truth, and there's a lot of tradition, and there's a lot of things that are mixed within the scriptures. And what I've done is
when you say scriptures, you mean both the Tanakh, the Old Testament, and the New Testament?
Yes, the Torah, the writings, Brit Hadashah, or any of the writings.
And for me, Tanakh is the scriptures, but I look at the New Testament as historical documents.
Right.
Okay, go on.
And so during my research, I'm finding out, which these documents are truthful, which ones can I rely on, in what language, what context. Like we're sitting here at the Jordan. I've been baptized up further.
How many times have you been baptized in your life, Anthony?
Legally?
I don't even know what that means legally.
Probably about 7 times.
Seriously? So when you were a baby, I assume that you had the Catholic baptism, right? And by the way, this is really cool. So we arrived here a few minutes ago, and there was a group of Catholics from Italy, and I actually did an interview with, we were listening to them do their prayers and sing some songs. And look, I mean, I know there's a lot of people who hear Catholics and they're like, ugh, they want to, especially I think people coming from a Catholic tradition who might be listening to this program. But I think we have other people listening to the program who are Christians, who are Catholics, who are all kinds, Jews, Reform, conservative, Orthodox, all kinds of different people. And I thought it was beautiful. I don't know what they were saying, but like it was beautiful music. Yeah. And so I actually recorded some of it and then spoke to one of the people from Italy and asked, what is this place? And so I'm going to play that recording right now.
La mia acqua non avrà più sete in eterno, e quest'acqua sarà per noi fonte di vita per l'eternità. L'umile acqua viva scorgeranno in colui che crederà, nel Signore darò a noi l'acqua divina e di verità.
So tell me, what brings you here to the Jordan River? Are you a Christian?
Yes, and we are making spiritual exercises in preparation of our next year of the seminary.
So you're studying to be a priest?
Yes.
A Catholic priest?
Yes, Catholic priest.
Where in Italy are you from?
I am from Matera, in south of Italy. We are all from Basilicata, the same region. Yes, it's next to Naples.
Wow, is this your first time in Israel, in the Holy Land?
Yes, for us young, yes, but the priests are already been there.
What's the significance of this place for you?
It's the place where Jesus accepted his baptism, and the place where we are going to live our old life and became new creatures and begin a new life.
Okay. And so what, according to your faith, according to your belief, happened in this spot?
Jesus was baptized, and Israel passed through the old land in the promised land.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. So anyway, that was pretty cool. Those people came from Italy, and and look, do we know that it was this exact spot and not 100 feet that way or 100 feet the other way? Not really. But the reason probably where it's been associated with this spot is geographically, especially the crossing of the Israelites of the Jordan River, is that it says it was opposite Jericho, and we are exactly opposite Jericho. It happens to be that we're in the middle of the worst sandstorm in modern Israeli history since they've started recording these things. But, and that's, there's also a wind coming with all kinds of sand. I don't know if they can edit out that wind sound. You can hear the wind blowing through the rushes here. It's really beautiful.
Very dusty.
And it's hard for people to comprehend how close the other bank of the Jordan is. We're on the western side of the Jordan River. And you can hear there's some people here who are pilgrims coming to the Jordan. Some of them may be coming to be baptized. I think most of them are sprinkling baptism because the water's kind of dirty here. But so they're kind of doing the sprinkling thing. But they are touching the Jordan River and, the place where Yeshua, according to the New Testament, was baptized. And so why this spot? And the answer is you can actually walk right up to the bank, to the Jordan River here. And in most places, it's actually kind of difficult to get to the Jordan. It has very deep banks in many places. And this is one of the spots across from Jericho, which is a natural ford. That's F-O-R-D. Ford originally means not the truck. It's the place where you cross a river. So there's a natural ford right here. And this is one of the fords, not fjord for you Norwegians. This is one of the fords of the Jordan River where people would cross. And so was it this exact ford where the Israelites crossed, or was it 100 feet away? We don't know that. But tradition places it here. It also places the spot where Yeshua was baptized by Yochanan HaMatbil, John the Baptist, right here. What are some other things? So I asked you in preparation for this to do some research and find out other things that happened on this spot. What'd you come up with, Anthony? What you got?
Well, I came up with the Israelites, of course, coming through, and John the Baptist being here, baptizing Yehoshua. And
You call him Yehoshua.
Yehoshua.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeshua for short.
So that's interesting. I never thought about that until this moment. So Yehoshua is Joshua the son of Nun to me, and he led the people across the Jordan at this spot, or maybe 100 feet away. Mm-hmm. And Jesus of Nazareth, known originally as Yeshua or Yehoshua, with the same name, he was baptized according to Christian tradition on this spot. And it's the description. Look, I mean, there it's a little more difficult. It describes that John the Baptist, was baptizing people, and the people came from Jerusalem and the Galilee. And so that's probably why they place it here, because we're just off the main road from Jerusalem. So if you were going to, baptize a bunch of people from Jerusalem, this would be the spot. And then the other reason is that it says after, I think it's in Matthew we were talking about this.
Yeah, it was in Matthew chapter 3.
Well, what's in 4? What happens in Matthew 4 immediately after the baptism?
After the baptism?
He's taken out into the wilderness.
Yes, into the wilderness.
And we are at the edge of the Judean wilderness, of the Judean desert. So the place where he was tempted, according to Matthew chapter 4, is, a few miles from here. So this has to be the spot, It has to be. And again, it could be 100 feet that way or 100 feet that way. Tradition says it's here. On the opposite side of the Jordan River, there is something called the Monastery of John the Baptist, where since around the 5th century, Christians have marked this spot. I don't think people can understand. I'm going to try to get some photos. I don't know if they can really understand how close the Jordan, other side of the Jordan is, and why, therefore, people are saying this is where they had to cross. It's just so narrow here. We were standing on the edge, and there was a man on the other side. I was in Israel, and he was in the kingdom of Jordan, and I did an interview with him, and I hope the audio came out. Let's play it right now. All right, I am here on the Jordan River, and I've just met a gentleman. I'm in Israel, and he is in the kingdom of Jordan. Can you say hello from over there? You gotta speak louder.
Hello from Jordan.
Wow. So this is so close. What would you say? This is like 10 feet across?
Yeah, maybe. I'm gonna go with 20.
20 feet? Okay.
I'm a fisher.
So this is radio. So can you describe what you see here?
Probably one of the most holy sites I've ever been to.
What's holy about it for you?
Well, I've read about this since I was 5 years old.
Wow.
Reading it in the Bible, and I went to private school my entire life. And to see what my teachers were reading to me and telling me to read, it's pretty amazing.
That's pretty cool. And what happened here according to your faith? Are you a Christian or Jewish or what are you?
I was baptized Christian, yes.
Which denomination?
Non-denominational.
Okay, so according to your faith, what happened on this spot?
Well, further over is the stuff I remember is John the Baptist being baptized or baptizing Jesus and having the Holy Spirit come down.
Excellent. Well, what's your name?
Lars.
And Lars, where are you from?
California, Long Beach, California.
And where do you live now, Lars?
I live in Riyadh.
Saudi
Arabia.
Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. He came from there, from California originally.
Yep.
And now he is in Jordan speaking to a man across the river in Israel, making the Jordanian guard behind him a little uncomfortable.
Uh-oh.
We better go now. Thanks a lot, Lars.
Thanks.
Wasn't that cool? That's amazing. He's this guy from America, from California, and he's from Saudi Arabia now living, and he comes to Jordan, and I'm talking to him from Israel. That's amazing.
He's excited.
Isn't that incredible? It's really cool. So what happened here besides those two incidents? The Israelites crossed into Israel for the first time, came full-fledged Israelites. Yeshua, or Yehoshua, was baptized and became a Did he become a Christian when he was baptized?
No. He became
We'll
the
talk more
anointed
about
one. Right.
Okay, well, all right, we'll talk more about that. That's an interesting statement. So he was anointed with the Holy Spirit according to your belief.
Correct, according to the scriptures.
You say according to the scriptures,
Yeah,
but I know different Christians and
according to
different
Matthew, the book of
Hebrew believers and Messianic have different ideas of when he was anointed, right? Or I don't know.
Correct.
All right. So what else happened here?
Yeah, I think it was Elijah and Elisha.
Elisha and Eliyahu, which
Yes.
I guess in English is Elijah and Elisha. Eliyahu is Elijah and
Eliyahu.
Elisha is Elisha. So Eliyahu was the prophet and Elisha was his sidekick. And I like the word sidekick. And he was his disciple. And it says that they were at Jericho and then they left Jericho and they crossed the Jordan River. And so again, geographically, this is the ford over the Jordan River opposite of Jericho. This is where they crossed. And so Elisha and Elijah cross over from Jericho into Transjordan, into what today is the kingdom of Jordan, and the plains. They left the plains of Jericho and went into the plains of Moab. And it's really interesting because the entire book of Deuteronomy takes place, or most of it, in the plains of Moab, which is just on the opposite side, 20 feet from here, according to the fisherman we interviewed before from Riyadh. And here's the plains of Jericho. And really, it's a single valley. And just to describe for people what we have here, and you can't see this today because it's not a clear day, but on a clear day, you can really clearly see. And the eastern side of the Jordan River is a mountain range, which is in the kingdom of Jordan. And that in Hebrew is called the mountains of Gilad, Hare Gilad, or the Gilead. And on the western side are the mountains of Judea and Samaria, really just the mountains of Israel. Today we call it Judea and Samaria. And in between those is the Jordan Valley. And by the way, in the eastern slope of those mountains is the Judean desert, where according to the geography, Yeshua would have been tempted in Matthew 4. So we have these two mountain ranges that run parallel north and south, and in between them is the Jordan Valley and the Jordan River, which cuts through the Jordan Valley. So the geography really dictates what's going on here. And in many places, it's very narrow and very difficult. It's very hilly. It's very difficult to get from the western mountains to the eastern mountains. But the plains of Jericho, they have this natural plain, and I don't know how wide it is. Someone can check on Google Earth maybe and post on my website, nehemiaswall.com. But I think it's around 10 miles wide. I'm just throwing out a number. It's wide. You could drive across it in about 10 or 15 minutes. That's where I'm getting 10 miles from. Well, it depends if you're an Israeli driver or not. Right? So, and then you have the similar thing on the eastern side of the Jordan, which in the Bible is called the Plains of Moab. And really, it's a single continuous valley cut by the Jordan River. So they were in the plains of Moab, in the book of Deuteronomy. And the book of Joshua, they cross over into the plains of Jericho. So you have Elijah and Elisha. Do you have anything else that happens here?
Kings.
I know we had a bunch of things we talked about beforehand.
Yeah.
And, it's funny because you do these discussions before we do the program. And then you think, well, I already said that. I don't need to say it again. It was in,
Yeah, I think
and it turns out it wasn't in the program. So we do have another story here, which is, I want to talk about something else. Let's talk about this. So here's the site where Yeshua was baptized, and you're coming from and don't be offended by this when I say you're coming from a Christian perspective, or maybe New Testament perspective is a better way of describing it.
Correct. Or New Covenant.
Okay, I prefer New Testament.
Okay.
You could say in Hebrew Brit Chadashah. That's fine. So you're coming from this, New Testament Brit Chadashah perspective. What is a baptism? Tell me in Tanakh terms what baptism is.
I believe a baptism is the immersion of oneself, which is cleansing oneself, the washing of oneself, the purifying of oneself of sin, especially turning back from sin, the forgiveness of sin, and then continuing on for the rest of the year.
Okay. What do you mean by the rest of the year?
Well, until feast and the cleansing.
Oh, so you do it more than once?
Yes, I believe you do.
So you don't just get baptized when you're a baby,
No.
according to your belief. Obviously, different people have different perspectives.
Correct.
We're not telling anybody what to believe.
Right.
This is Anthony's Hebrew voice.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Now, I've asked this question to a lot of Hebrew roots people, because Christians, I think, one of the things I've heard from Christians, I don't know if everybody believes this, is that baptism was a new sacrament instituted by the New Testament, and that by being baptized, you were entering into a new covenant, leaving the old covenant behind. I've talked to some, I guess, Messianics and Hebrew roots people and asked them, so what is this baptism thing to you? Because you say that the Torah is still valid.
Right.
Where in the Torah do you have this concept of baptism? And I've heard all kinds of interesting things. And I've never really gotten a satisfactory answer until we were discussing this on the way down here from Jerusalem, going down the Jericho Road.
Exciting, yeah.
And really beforehand, I was, preparing for this and reading the section. And I told you, here's the homework, Anthony. Read as preparation, what was it, Deuteronomy 24 through Joshua 6, and we read some other stuff too, but that was the main thing that we really kind of focused on, because that takes place here in the spot where we're sitting, or a mile from here. Some of the things, when they brought down the walls of Jericho in Joshua 6, that's a few miles from here. We could, on a clear day, you could see Jericho from here. That's how close it is. It's amazing. Actually, at one time, this was in sniper range of Jericho. In 2001, I think, and 2, if I remember correctly, there was a second intifada, and the Palestinian terrorist snipers would get up on top of the casino, which had been the symbol of peace. What's that about? A casino is a symbol of peace, but the idea was that there's no casinos in Israel. Jews would come from Tel Aviv to spend their money at the Jericho casino, and it became the symbol of peace and coexistence. Well, it became a symbol of war, and they used it as a sniper's nest to attack Jews who were driving on the road that we just drove on, which is the Jericho bypass. So that's how close Jericho is. So we're sitting at the spot where these things took place. And so in preparation, we read the main stories that took place here. And one of the things that hit me as I'm reading this, and I think it hit you the same thing, because when I brought it up to you, you're like, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yes.
It's like you were completing my sentences. It's like we're an old married couple or something. But just to be clear, you're married to a woman, right?
Oh, definitely.
Okay, and I'm looking for a wife.
Yeah.
Okay.
With kids.
But you have kids.
Yes,
right.
I do have kids, yeah.
Okay, how many kids do you have?
I have 5 boys.
You want to give a shout out to your boys?
Hey, Anthony, Brian, Drake, Jordan, and Jacob.
And to your wife?
And, of course, my lovely wife, Jennifer. Without her, none of this would be possible.
Shalom, Jennifer. All right.
Shalom, Jen.
So what was the thing that hit me and that hit you, both as we were reading this? So one of the things that took place, probably less than I could probably, I hate to use this expression, I could probably spit the place where this took place is so close. Like I could hit it with the sweat when I move my, swish my hair. Oh, I don't have any hair, but I do have a lot of sweat. It's really close. It probably took place
20 feet.
No, it probably took place 10 feet from here.
10 feet, yeah.
Meaning the event that we're talking about is the crossing of the Jordan. And who came across first? That's the interesting thing. And the people who came across first were the Kohanim. Let me read that passage. Or do you want to read? Do you have that one?
No,
or
go ahead.
do I have to read it? Okay. So I'm going to read you this is Joshua chapter 3, verse 15. And it says as follows. Now the Jordan River overflows its banks throughout the time of harvest. And that's an important point. Today we're sitting right next to the Jordan River, and the bank is behind me. And the bank is probably, 10 feet high or 15 feet high?
15.
On the Israeli side. The Jordanian side, it looks like it's maybe not as high. Oh, it could be as high. And those banks were full back then. Today, the banks never get full. And why don't they get full, the banks of the river? Because we siphon off the water in Israel from the Sea of Galilee. And so the river never, and there's also a dam upriver, which prevents also this flooding. But at that time, the river was much deeper. That's an important historical kind of context here. It still wasn't that wide. So then instead of being 20 feet wide, maybe it was 50 feet wide or 60 feet wide. We're not talking about the Mississippi here, guys. We're talking about a place that you could swim across. You could wade across, probably. Back then you couldn't wade across. You could swim across.
Yeah, this is...
So there was a miracle that took place. It's in Joshua chapter 3, verse 14, verse 13. It says, when the soles of the feet of the priests who bear the ark of Yehovah, the Lord of all the earths, rest in the waters of the Jordan flowing from above shall be cut off. They shall stand in a single heap. That's really interesting. The waters, we're told, will stop, and then it actually happens. When the people set out, verse 14, when the people set out from their tents to cross over the Jordan, right here where we're sitting, 20 feet, 30 feet away. When the people set out from their tents to cross over the Jordan, the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant were in front of the people. Now the Jordan overflows all its banks throughout the time of harvest. So when those who bore the Ark had come to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests bearing the Ark were dipped in the edge of the waters flowing from above stood still, rising up in a single heap far off at Adam, the city that is beside Zaratan or Sultan, while those flowing towards the sea of the Arava, the Dead Sea, were wholly cut off. So basically the Jordan River stopped up at Adam, which today is the Damia Bridge. We call it Gesher Damia in Hebrew. That's ancient city of Adam. The Adam Bridge. I don't know what they call it in English. It might be called the Allenby Bridge. I believe it is called the Allenby Bridge. After Allenby, the general who conquered Israel. But I could be confusing two bridges. Don't listen to me. It's the Damia Bridge, or Adam Bridge, which is another ford over the Jordan. Hence why there was a bridge there. So verse 17 of Joshua 3, while all Israel were crossing over on dry land, the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of Yehovah stood on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan until the entire nation finished crossing over. And it goes on in Joshua 4 and talks about how they took stones from the bottom and they set up stones at Gilgal and put other stones here. I'd love to flick a stone to stop the water here so we could see those stones in the bottom. Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be
Or I
cool.
bet you could go with like a sonar or something. No one's going to do this because it's a border between two countries. And just so people are clear, like I can see it often the Jordanian guard there. And I can see over here behind me the Israeli guard with his, what has he got? That's an M16 with what is that thing? A grenade launcher. Mm-hmm. And over here is the Jordanian guard. I don't think the Jordanian is armed, or I don't see his
he might have a pistol, but
he might have a pistol. I don't see a long rifle. That's probably for the best. So anyway, that's how close we are here. So probably somewhere down here below us are the stones, and that would actually prove definitively that this was the spot. It might be covered over in sediment because it's been 3,400 years. It's amazing we're here where all these things happened. There's the Jordanian guard on his cell phone. I think he's reporting to Jordanian intelligence. There's two crazy guys who are on a recording over here speaking about the Bible.
To his wife saying he's going to be late for lunch.
That's probably what he is saying. Right. Yeah.
Well, there was that other passage in Psalms.
Allenby, I am speaking here to a lady. What is your name, man? Would you come here and speak to our recording? This is a woman who's standing with her feet in the Jordan the way the priests were standing when they crossed over. I'm not that brave just yet.
Street on Allenby in Tel Aviv. That's
Allenby Street in general. So in 1917, the British conquered Israel, and the British general who took credit, I should say, was a man named General Allenby. And he was the first one to conquer Israel since 1517 when the Turks conquered Israel. That's not entirely true because other people conquered it. But the first one to conquer it and hold it was General Allenby. Okay. He conquered it from the Ottoman Turks. Okay. And so there's a bridge named after him upriver. There's roads in Tel Aviv. He's got a lot of things that he named after himself.
I wondered who Allenby was.
Yeah, he's a British guy.
He's British.
Yeah, well, he was probably in charge, and I don't know who decided to call it Allenby, but I'm sure he had a say in it since he was a general. Yeah. Anyway, so we're doing a podcast here called Hebrew Voices, and we're hearing different perspectives about the Bible from Jews and Christians and other people, and anything about Israel or the history of Israel or the people of Israel. Where are you from? Who are you? Where are y'all from?
Okay, we're Sherry and Rick Conley, and we're from South Carolina in America.
South Carolina, yes. Cool. So, and are you Jews or Christians?
We're Christians, and we are on a trip to Israel on our own. People, a lot of our relatives think we're crazy.
Oh no, you're not crazy.
We're not on a guided tour or whatever. We have a rental car out there, and we're just kind of seeing the sights.
Come on with that, sister.
And we saw the other alleged baptism. We were there yesterday. The
Yardenis. Yes. So that one was actually established in the 50s when this was a no man's land between Israel and Jordan. Mm-hmm. Nobody claims that that's where Jesus was baptized. They just say, well, I mean, up until 2011, this was a closed military zone on the Israeli side with landmines. And you could get to the Jordanian side, but I was there in 2007. You had to go through 10 layers of security and go on like an armored bus with Jordanian security. So basically, that's why they set up the one in the north. Okay. But this is the one where at least tradition and history, I think, also points to this being the site of the baptism.
Well, this makes more sense too because it talks about Jesus went up into the mountainside.
That's what we were talking about.
That's right.
When I saw it, I said, "This looks like it."
Yeah. So this is the wilderness here, the Judean desert. Yeah. You can feel the heat.
This seems like more where John would have lived.
Right.
John. Than up where we were around, the other sites.
Well, I think John was probably up there too. He's probably moving back and forth in this region. Well, it was nice to meet you. Thanks for being. You're going to be on this program. It's called. Thank you. It's called Hebrew Voices, the Nehemiah's Wall, Nehemia's Wall. I'm Nehemia.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, we're going to continue with the program now. Right. Yeah, and her feet are her feet are back in the Jordan, and I think the Jordan is splitting up at the Allenby Bridge at Damia Bridge. No, it's
drying up on east and west.
It's not. So, okay.
I didn't realize we were so close to Jordan.
Can you believe how close we are to Jordan?
I saw the uniform. I took the pictures.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, what were we talking about?
Yeah, I think we were talking about Psalms.
Oh, so this is so cool. So they stepped with their feet in the Jordan River, and the Jordan stopped. And what's really interesting, coming from I studied archaeology and biblical studies, and one of the things that when we read the story, one of the things they told us is that in 1929 there was an earthquake. And that earthquake caused a cliff to fall into the Jordan River. And that earthquake stopped the waters of the Jordan for an entire day until the waters built up or found a way around. And then they continued to flow with the Jordan River changing its course. And I don't know if that's what's being described, but it sounds awfully like it. That when they put their feet in, Yehovah said, come on, mountains. It's time for you to step up. Whoo! And he split the river.
Amen.
He shook the mountains. And that actually fits something we read in Psalm 114?
Yes.
Can you read that?
Verse 3. It says, the sea saw it and fled. The Yarden was driven back. The mountains skipped like rams, the little hills like lambs. What was it? You see that you fled. You Yarden, that you turned back.
So we have two incidents in history which are parallel to each other, and they're directly connected here in Psalms, and they're also connected in the book of Joshua. And the two incidents are the splitting of the sea by Moses, the Red Sea, and then approximately, or I think exactly, 40 years later, it was Joshua who then caused the Jordan River to dry up. And it says actually in Joshua, I read that verse, when I was preparing this, just reminding myself, it says there that this was to show the world and the Israelites that Yehovah is with Joshua. Here, it's Joshua 4:14. On that day, Yehovah exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they stood in awe of him as they had stood in awe of Moses all the days of his life. So this was to show the Israelites, and there's a verse either before or later, which says it was also to show the world. Like they saw this happen, and they're like, oh boy, God is with these people. Here, it's verse 18 of Joshua 4. When the priests bearing the Ark of the Covenant of Yehovah came up from the middle of the Jordan, and the soles of the priests' feet touched the dry ground, the waters of the Jordan returned to their place and overflowed all its banks as before. And by the way, I mentioned the earthquake, which I think is kind of alluded to there when it talks about the mountains moving and skipping.
Yes.
That may be describing an earthquake. We are in the Syro-African Rift Valley. There are a lot of earthquakes here. Like I said, 1920 was a major earthquake. And there's a verse somewhere here. I don't know where it is. Guys, look it up and post it on my website, nehemiaswall.com. The verse where, do you have the verse where it says that the whole world saw this? And they were, or did I make that up?
No,
I don't think I made it up.
I
It's somewhere
have,
here.
Joshua 1,
That's not even, it's funny. That's not even what I wanted to talk about. This is all the introduction. This is the Hebrew Voices. The Hebrew Voices isn't just the Haftarah portion. The Hebrew Voices is all kinds of things related to scripture and the history of Israel and the Hebrew language and the people of Israel and those who love Israel. So, all right. And we just spoke to some Hebrew Voices from, where were they from? Wisconsin? Some really cold place.
No, I think it was Carolina.
Oh, South Carolina. I have Wisconsin on my mind for some reason. I need some cheese.
If she would have said Kakalaki, I think it would have been more
Kakalaki, where that?
dominant. Well, because it's more native. It's North Kakalaki, South Kakalaki.
Oh, it's Carolina. Okay.
Carolina, yeah.
Anyway, so the priests, they came across in this very spot, and here's what caught my attention. This is what we were totally sidetracked on, what we want to talk about. What caught my attention before is the word for the feet of the priests being in the water is, let me look at it. What was it? Chapter 3, what? Do you remember? Got to read people what this verse is. I mean, this is just so important. Let me back up. When I've asked people coming from the Hebrew roots perspective and the Messianic perspective, I say, what is this baptism? I don't have baptism in the Tanakh. They say it's purification. And I say, wait a minute, purification? In the Torah, when people purified themselves, it says, it'll say like, v'yirchatz bisaro b'mayim. He shall wash his flesh in water. It doesn't say anything about immersion. Mm-hmm. It has the word rachatz, to wash, and it was clothes, it's kibes, which is to launder, to wash. The word for baptism, in Greek it's baptismo, or baptizo. The word for baptism in Hebrew would be taval. And it's interesting, I hear people from the Christian or Hebrew roots or Messianic perspectives, and they'll say, I was mikvahd. That's what they'll say. And that's like a Hebrew alternative to baptized.
I couldn't find it in the book of Matthew.
So mikvah is, means just any body of water. The seas are called a mikvah. In Genesis chapter 1, it says the water is gathered. Mikvah means gathering, a gathering of waters. So it's any body of water from a small pool to a sea, the literal meaning of mikvah. So you can't say you were mikvahd. The Hebrew word is taval, which means to immerse, or to be immersed, or to immerse. And John in Hebrew is called Yochanan, John, Hamatbil, the immerser, the baptizer, the toveler, matbil. It's interesting, that word appears in the book of Ruth, where it describes Ruth dipping her bread into vinegar. And actually, the Hebrew is chometz, which some people say refers to hummus, hummus. It's the same hummus. Word. Yeah, it's the word in Hebrew. It's kind of because it's sour. That's what it literally means. So she probably dipped her bread in hummus. And if you think how Israelis dip their pita in hummus, their bread, that's what it means to be immersed. It's not the same thing. Washing you can wash yourself through immersion, but you can also wash yourself by taking a jug of water and pouring it over your head. So where does this immersion thing come from? And I asked that to a lot of Hebrew roots people, and I've never gotten a satisfactory answer, as I said, until we were on our way here. And let me read again verse 13 in Hebrew of Joshua. Is it Joshua 3, I believe? Joshua 3, verse 13. It says, "V'haya kenoch kapot raglei hakohanim." Okay, that's not it. That is where he says it will happen, and then it actually it's interesting. It says, the feet of the priests will rest. That's what it says in verse 13. And then in verse 15, it says, "And it came to pass when those carrying the ark up to the Jordan, and the feet of the Kohanim carrying the ark nitbelu were baptized in the edge of the water."
I'm going to try to do that right now.
Okay, so Anthony right now is baptizing his feet, or literally immersing his feet. So if you were a Kohen, a priest, carrying the ark, right now, you have the ark on your shoulder, right now with your feet, you're up to your knees in it, right now the water would have split. It would have stopped up at the Allenby Bridge. Right now we might have heard the shaking of the earth, maybe. The earth would have shaken, the mountains skipped, the cliff would have fallen into the Jordan River, or something would have happened, and the Jordan would have dried up, allowing the Israelites to cross over this 20 feet, or maybe even 50 or 60 feet back then, because it was more full, crossing on dry land, sort of a little repeat of what happened. Obviously, he's doing it 7 times. Why 7 times? So this brings us to the other time that word baptism appears, and that's in the story of Naaman. I think we talked about it on the way over here. I don't think we read it. Yeah. The story of Naaman, who was the Syrian general who had leprosy, and Elisha, the same man who crossed over here with his master Elijah. That same Elisha, that's him doing it 7 times, Anthony. Are you a Syrian general with leprosy?
No,
but it can't hurt.
If I have anything, I guarantee after the 7th time it's going to be gone.
I don't know. Be careful what you guarantee. It's up to Yehovah. Anyway, so he immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan at the instruction of Elisha, and his leprosy went away. And the interesting thing there is that's the other time in the Bible we find this term of baptism. And I think I talked about this with one of the programs with Keith in Prophet Pearls, that's the only time it talks about somebody being baptized in the Jordan River. And literally, he was just immersed. He was immersing himself in the Jordan. All right, that's number 7. And it's all right. And so Naaman immersed 7 times in the Jordan. And now I can see a second place, which I didn't even realize. It didn't occur to me because it says they immersed, their feet were immersed. They were baptized in the Jordan River. And so what are we really saying here? I don't know what we're saying. Talk to me, Anthony. What is the significance of this for you, coming from a New Testament perspective? What is this? Well, what does this have to do with Jesus of Nazareth, Yeshua HaNotzli?
I've always liked to walk the scriptures to find out really where it was and what it was that they were doing, to get that experience and to be able to teach somebody else or to explain to somebody else what the verse or the chapter or wherever in the Tanakh or the Brit Hadashah is referring to. Whatever it's referring to, at least have foreknowledge and an actual knowledge of doing these things. So
now you've done what Naaman did, although he went the whole way. You just went with your feet.
Well, yeah.
Are you willing to go the whole way in this water? Is it too dirty?
Not right now.
Okay. And I should tell people the reason it's dirty isn't because of this. There's nothing inherent in this geographic location that makes the water dirty. The reason it's dirty is that both Israel and the Kingdom of Jordan have fish ponds upriver, and they grow fish there in a very high concentration. And when they harvest the fish, they then flush the water from the fish ponds into the Jordan River. And that fish pond water is very dirty. There might also be some sewage water. But yeah, so this is the reason that I hope you clean your feet really well after this.
Yeah, well, I got antiseptic and everything.
Excellent. All right. But back then, the people didn't need that. The priest didn't need it. Yeshua, when he was baptized in here, he didn't need it. It was when we have another time, that's, by the way, so we've got the splitting of the Red Sea. We've got the cessation of the Jordan from flowing. We have twice more that this happens. And that was and people, this is homework. We're not going to go into it. We've, spent more time on this than I really wanted to. I want to get to Joshua 1. But the second time, or the third and fourth time really that this happens is when Elijah and Elisha, Eliyahu and Elijah and Elisha, they leave Jericho, come to the Jordan River, and then we're told the water splits and they cross over on dry land. And then Elisha asked Eliyahu, he says, I want Pishnayim of your spirit, which most people translate as a double portion. I say it's 2/3. I've talked about that in Prophet Pearls. And it's at this spot they cross over, and somewhere over there, they're walking and talking. And he says, well, you know what? I don't know if you're going to get the double spirit. It's not dependent on me. It's, it's called the spirit of Eliyahu, but it's not my spirit. It's Yehovah's spirit. The way I'm going to know, and you're going to know, is if you see me taken up to heaven, then you're going to get it. And if you don't, you won't. And he saw Elijah taken up in a chariot of fire with horses of fire, it says. They came down, and then he rose to heaven. And then Elisha walked back, and then he took the mantle, which is really the coat, like kind of a pelt of an animal.
I couldn't understand the mantle.
And he took it, and he split the Jordan with it and crossed over on dry land. The fourth time a body of water split, 3 times the Jordan, once the Red Sea. And that showed him that, yes, I do have that spirit of Eliyahu. It's been confirmed. The prophet spoke it. It was fulfilled with my eyes, and now it's fulfilled with my actions. And so this is the very spot, or very close to the very spot, where all these things happened, where Joshua crossed over with the people and the water dried up, and then Elisha and Eliyahu crossed over. And it's interesting, the man's name is Elisha, which means my God saves, from the root Yud Shin Ayin, which is the same root as Yehoshua, Yeshua, which means Yehovah saves. So in a sense, Elisha and Yehoshua are almost the same name. One means my God saves, and the other means Yehovah saves. That's pretty cool. And here I want to stop for some people say, well, wait a minute, Nehemia, what are you saying? And what I'm saying is, if your faith is, if you believe in Yeshua, then the parallel there is, history was repeating itself. And if you're coming at it, from a secular perspective or from a Jewish perspective, you might say, well, at the very least, the person who wrote the story was making a parallel to the story of Eliyahu and Elisha. They were drawing a parallel, whether it actually happened or not, or whether it happened that way. And the way I would look at it, honestly, is that Joshua, it's interesting I said Joshua, I wanted to say Jesus. Yeshua, that when he came to the Jordan, I'm sure he realized, okay, this is the spot where the Israelites crossed, and this is the spot where Elisha crossed and Eliyahu crossed, and he was meeting with John, who was seen as an Eliyahu, Elijah figure. I mean, there's a lot going on there. You can't tell me that Jesus, Yeshua, Yehoshua came to the spot and wasn't thinking about that as well. And then what's interesting is it says that the chariot of fire and the horses of fire came down, and you were reading to me something which is in the New Testament account. Again, you could read this as from a faith perspective, or this is how the Gospels understood the event. What does it say there happened? Was this in Luke? I think Luke chapter 3.
Yes. Okay, I'm reading from Luke 3:15. As the people were filled with expectation, and all were questioning in their hearts concerning John, whether he might be the Messiah.
Well, I got to stop there. So John the Baptist is standing here on the banks of the Jordan River, baptizing people, and people think this has got to be the Mashiach. Someone's got to come and defeat the Romans for us, and this has got to be the guy.
16.
Or maybe it is.
John answered all of them by saying, I baptize you with water, but one who is more powerful than I is coming. I am not worthy to untie the thongs of his sandals. He will baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire.
Wow. So this is really cool, and I'm not going to get into this today. This should be a whole topic. I should come back here with you or somebody and talk about the Hebrew Matthew version of the story that takes place on this spot with John the Baptist, and how comparing the Greek and the Hebrew in Matthew. And then what's really interesting is it appears in 4 of the Gospels, and the Hebrew Matthew doesn't agree closest to the Matthew version, it agrees closest to the Luke version. Which is unbelievable. There's I believe 2 whole verses that don't appear in Matthew in the Greek, but do appear in Matthew in the Hebrew, and they also appear in Luke in the Greek. That's really cool. What an amazing discussion this has been. I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of this very first episode of Hebrew Voices, Deborah Ryden of California. Anthony, the Bible keeps coming back to this very spot on the Jordan River, and I think we need to come back here to continue talking about the ancient events that took place right here. Until then, I hope the people will be filled with expectation for next week's episode. Shalom.
You have been listening to Hebrew Voices with Nehemia Gordon. Thank you for supporting Nehemia's Makor Hebrew Foundation. Learn more at nehemiaswall.com.